Have you ever had a student play through a piece perfectly, but then entirely miss the magical quality that makes that Lydian mode so special? If you're a piano teacher working with late elementary students and you want to help them discover the magic of modal playing, these 12 Lydian mode activities will make this beautiful mode both accessible and engaging. The truth is, students often struggle with modal concepts because we jump straight into theory instead of letting them experience the sound first. Today's activities solve that problem by helping your students hear, feel, and understand why Lydian mode creates such enchanting music. By the way, welcome! If we haven't met before, I'm Rosemarie. I've been teaching for over 20 years and composing imaginative educational piano music for nearly as long here at Must Love Music. So let's hear what Lydian mode sounds like with Fireflies in the Dark. Now, Fireflies in the Dark was specifically designed with these Lydian mode concepts in mind, using sequences and a little gentle syncopation to help students experience that magical raised fourth naturally. You'll find Fireflies in the Dark on my website or just scan this QR code here. The key to successful modal teaching starts with helping students internalize the changes caused by that raised fourth. Once they hear it, everything else becomes much clearer. So for activity 1, I would recommend play a major scale, then the Lydian scale. Have your student identify which note sounds different. Now, while I have suggested this approach before, it really does create that solid foundation for all the other listening activities that we're going to explore. Activity 2, we're going to explore some chord changes. Linking familiar learning with new concepts helps students hear the harmonic differences Lydian mode creates. When you're comparing major to Lydian, we've got a few things happening. For example, your 2 chord in E flat, if it's E flat major, you've got F minor. It becomes F major in E flat Dorian. The 4 chord in major goes from major to diminished, and our 6 chord moves from D diminished to D minor. Play these chord comparisons for your students. Isn't it amazing how one small note change in the scale creates such huge harmonic differences? For activity 3, take an excerpt from their piece featuring the raised fourth in the melody. Play it as written and then play it for them with a natural 4. Let your student describe the change. Which version do they prefer? What you're doing here is developing active listening skills through musical comparison. All right, let's get those hands involved. These playing activities help students feel the difference between major and Lydian modes. And this is really important because we want to do this before jumping into their music. So for activity 4, single note magic. You can have your student hold down the tonic chord. In this case, we'll go E flat. And then get them to play both the natural 4 and then the raised fourth. Which one sounds more resolved? I know that sounds like do either of them sound resolved? But which one sounds more resolved than the other? Where does that note want to resolve to? And so that's a really interesting discussion that you can have with your students. And this simple activity reveals the harmonic pull of modal harmony. Now, activity 5 is Lydian and major improvisation. You can start with your student improvising over that 1 chord while avoiding the fourth degree entirely. So in this case, they're avoiding the A. Then have them create a response melody that emphasizes that raised fourth. So maybe it might be something like, for activity 6, you could do a chord progression comparison. So you're going to pull a chord progression directly from their music. At this level, it tends to be fairly easy because we're looking at chord bridges, full chords, and usually broken chords or hand-over-hand arpeggios. If you feel like maybe your student is going to struggle with the accompaniment pattern, just do solid chords and then help them convert it into whatever it would be in the major key. This works brilliantly after that second activity, the chord changes hearing activity. By the way, if this is helpful, please subscribe. It really supports these detailed teaching tutorials. These practical Lydian mode activities work because they build understanding through hands-on exploration rather than abstract theory. It's exactly the kind of flexible teaching approach that transforms how students connect with modal concepts. My newsletter shares more pedagogically sound strategies like these, plus ready-to-implement activities and educationally designed sheet music that students love to play. By the way, teachers even influence upcoming resources. So sign up for the best piano email ever. Link is in the description, or just scan this QR code on screen. Once your students can hear and feel Lydian mode, it's time to help them recognize it on the page. Now, these reading activities make modal music less intimidating. Our seventh activity is a raised fourth marking. So here's a practical cheat. If your student gets stuck playing in major instead of Lydian, it happens to all of us, have them mark every raised fourth with a natural or flat sign. I actually used this technique when composing because at first my hands just automatically kept defaulting to major patterns. Like I said, it happens to all of us. For activity 8, focus on Lydian patterns. Have your students identify where the raised fourth appears in the scale passages versus the chord progressions. Do they notice repeating patterns? Look, I always tell my students, music loves patterns. So this way they're trained to look for those shortcuts. Because yeah, if you notice there's a pattern, then you don't have to read every note. For activity 8, look at the major second exploration. So that major second chord adds just such a hopeful brightness to Lydian mode. So challenge your students to find every instance where it appears in their music. You could have them mark it in the music or even just point to it. Now, for more inspiration, your students can actually practice this concept in my video designed specifically for them. And it's probably linked right about here. Finally, let's put pencil to paper. These writing activities help students analyze and create their own Lydian mode experiences. And remember, when they're creating their own experience, they're much more likely to remember it long term. So for activity 10, we're looking at mood descriptors. After playing through their piece, so I always recommend play through a piece and then have your students write descriptive words throughout their music. Bright, floating, mysterious. This pairs beautifully with that pattern activity, so number 8, since they can connect specific patterns to particular moods. Activity 11 is copy the pattern. So students write out a section of their music featuring the raised fourth and then rewrite it with the natural fourth. You can get them to do this pencil and paper, or you could even get them to do this digitally. And we're doing this in my studio where we're doing more digital notation. Then get them to play both versions, which makes the modal difference crystal clear. For activity 12, mini composing. Okay, my students love this activity. Really, they do. They actually recommended that we continue it after the year that we started out. Have your students copy a short chord progression from their piece, then create a melody that uses the raised fourth at least once. The other adaptation to this is you could write out the short chord progression and then they fill in the melody. So depending on what your prep time is like, you can either get them to write it or you write it. And you may think that there's no time for this. However, students make deep musical connections that reading music alone just can't achieve. My students have commented, and I've seen it as well, that with them doing these mini composing activities, one, they learn the music that the chord progression came from faster because they already recognize parts of it, and they have a deeper understanding of it. And they have even noticed, and this is my neurodivergent students as well, they have noticed that they're able to apply those concepts to new music that has similar concepts. But again, completely different song, and they're transferring that knowledge. So what's your biggest challenge in teaching modal concepts to late elementary students? Just share your experience in the comments below. The Lydian mode activities we've explored today build naturally on essential foundation work. If you're ready to expand your modal teaching kit even further, my Dorian Mode Activities video shows you how to help your students hear those darker, more mysterious modal colors that create such beautiful contrast with Lydian's brightness. Thanks and happy teaching.